Good morning, everybody. Larry has been good enough to loan me his pulpit just for today so that I can finish up a project for school. Where you go? So thank you, Larry, and thank all of you. You are my teaching lab this morning. I also bring a big thank you all the way from the Mississippi Delta from Katie for all of your prayers on her behalf recently. As most of you know, I know we have some visitors today though. Our daughter Katie is a teacher with the Teach for America program down in the Mississippi Delta. Her job has been a real challenge lately. There are some students in her classes who have made her life pretty miserable. Her house was broken into. We don't know by who, but that really scared her. And someone threw bricks through the windows of her TFA colleagues. Pretty scary stuff for a small-town kid. But this last week was incident-free at her school and in her home, thank God. She had a better week, and she is determined to stay and do whatever she can there. As her mother, I had a terrible few days, thinking of her all the way down there, facing, I don't know what. For a time, we wondered if she was being targeted by a gang of young men in her town, some of whom are the students who are giving her such a hard time. We don't know that. But I prayed for her unceasingly, a prayer I have often prayed for my girls. Lord, set your angels about them and don't let any harm come to them. All the week that this was going on, I envisioned a more precise angel that I wanted God to dispatch around my Katie's side. I prayed for big, bad, burly-looking angels with tattoos and leather jackets. I wanted angels fluent in that gang language of the South. Maybe these angels ride Harleys and have blades stuck in their boot just in case. I didn't really want them to do anything. I just wanted them to be able to say, just at the opportune moment, why don't you just be it? And the problem would be solved. Anything to remove the dangerous bugs from Katie's proximity. Just keep her safe from them. Just keep her safe. One evening on the phone, I told Katie, you don't have to finish your commitment down there. It would be okay if you packed up your stuff and you came right home. Her voice became low and firm. It was her teacher voice. Mom, I do not need to hear that. Well, that voice scares me no matter who uses it. Not knowing what else to say, I shifted gears fast and I talked about Thanksgiving. All of our girls will be home and I know they're all looking forward to it. We'll have Thanksgiving dinner just as we always do with our friends the Crispins. I told Katie I was going to whip up about 30 pounds of mashed potatoes. Katie's happy response was yes! And you're laughing over there, but you know we're not kidding. After all, if I can't get her to come home for good, I can at least feed her mashed potatoes and turkey, cranberry bread and pumpkin pie before I have to give her back. Our scripture reading this week from the book of 1 Samuel tells the story of Hannah. I love all these strong Old Testament women, don't you? You're not, I love them too. Now Samuel, you recall, eventually becomes a beloved prophet of Israel. He is Israel's kingmaker. At the people's request and at God's somewhat reluctant permission, Samuel was instrumental in appointing King Saul as king. When that didn't work out, Samuel shepherded in David as king. Samuel's place in biblical history was crucial, but before he could take his place in history, there was his mother. There was Hannah. She was one of the two wives of Elkanah. More about him later. The other wife was Peninnah. That insufferable Peninnah. By all accounts, she was a nightmare. Do you know someone like her? a person who takes joy in just someone else's pain. She knew Hannah's soft spot, and she enjoyed just poking at it incessantly. Do you know somebody like that? Are you sitting next to somebody like that? No. You would think that this Peninnah would have enough on her hands with her brood of sons and daughters, and yet she provoked and irritated Hannah incessantly. Now, we don't really know which of these two wives was on the scene first. Perhaps Hannah was the first wife, and when it became apparent that no children were coming, perhaps Elkanah married Peninnah to ensure some offspring. That was common, and that was important. Or perhaps it was the other way around, and Peninnah was the first wife, and Hannah was the apple of Elkanah's eye. We can all imagine that. Two women in one household is always a challenge. We don't know which came first, but we do know that the tension between these two was thick, no matter what their circumstance was. And their circumstance was not going away anytime soon. After all, this was a family and would not be tossed away lightly. Year after year, Peninnah provoked Hannah until she wept bitterly. She stopped eating. Her personhood, her spirit, like her appetite, and we can presume like her body, became diminished. She was eroding in front of her family's eyes into less than who she was supposed to be. Now, Elkanah, for his part, seems like a pretty decent guy to me. He loved Hannah dearly. The scriptures say as much. He sees her. He sees her. He engages in her sadness. He genuinely cares about her. We might assume that he is also sad that they don't have a child together. And he says to her, "Am I not worth more to you than 10 sons?" Strange how misguided love can be sometimes. How many of us mishandle another person's crushing emotions. The passage tells us he gave her a double portion of food. I can just hear him. "Hannah, eat something." "I know. How about 30 pounds of mashed potatoes?" Now the story begins to look familiar. Seems there's no end to the creative ways that we can undermine another person's healing. Hannah, after all, was not hungry for food.